Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Power series. Today's episode is called Why So Many Spiritual People Struggle with Money and It's Not What You Think. So every single week in the Power series, I'll be delving into topics around being embodied in your power, being embodied in the medicine that you carry, taking that to the next level, really deeply diving into your own intuition, trusting yourself, showing up in confidence in the world. And if we haven't met yet, my name's Margarita Alcantara, and I help New Earth leader entrepreneurs open into the next level of their embodied power so that they can fulfill their mission on Earth. By the end of this video, you'll understand the core money blocks in the spiritual community, especially spiritual entrepreneurs, the scarcity, poverty, and martyr programs that exist within the spiritual community, what undercharging for your services is really about, uncovering the beliefs about money that you've inherited, and the truth about where money actually comes from. So some of this is going to be familiar, some of it is going to be not familiar at all. And it's all good because it's important to have this conversation. And I really wanted to have this conversation because there's just been a lot showing up in the world, a lot of outdated matrices in the world that are showing up and really being revealed. And one of those matrices is about money, because it's often not about money, really. It's about what money represents to you. And for people who are in the spiritual realm, it's very charged emotionally. So I really wanted to delve into the truth of all of this. And this is coming from me having explored this work and being a spiritual entrepreneur myself for almost 20 years now. So if this conversation resonates for you, make sure you subscribe, because each week I'm going to be releasing a new video around topics such as this. So make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss one. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about money in this second episode is because it is such a highly charged topic in the spiritual community. And actually, when it comes to money, money is actually neutral. So people assign roles to it, people make it something and they call it bad or good or whatever they want to call it. And it's a very charged topic. And so I know, and I'm going to get into why, some of these topics are so charged in a moment. But the story that really sparked this episode for me is that I've been an energy worker for almost 20 years, and I've been mentoring New Earth leaders for about 8-9 years now. And these themes are coming up on a regular basis. And I recently saw a lot of these themes pop up in a recent YouTube video that I was watching of someone that I have been following very meticulously. I really find her energy reads to be super accurate. I really admire her work, and I've really been following her for a while. And also, there's an individual who she does follow, and she talked very highly of him, so I started checking out his work as well. And what I realized was that they both have a lot of heart, but they've got a lot of hangups around money and a lot of outdated beliefs around money. And in particular with this one person, this one woman who I've been following, it was very clear that it was a very touchy subject for her, and it was also causing her a lot of pain. What I'm really wanting to do is really point out a theme that is showing up in the spiritual community, and it's not necessarily about this individual. So some of the things she was saying was that she has no interest in money. She doesn't like money. She hates money even. She said she was actually saying that people who make 6 and 7 figures are bad, and it basically means you've sold your soul to Satan. She was saying that bad people make a lot of money and that good people basically make no money. She was saying that authentic spiritual teachers don't want financial success. And that was very interesting. She also said that they don't charge thousands of dollars for their services, for their work, for retreats, and that it's a big red flag when you see that they do that. And I don't agree with that, and I'll share why in a little bit. But she went on to say that coaching packages are kind of a farce. She was just basically not agreeing with coaching whatsoever. And her work is more focused on energy work, so maybe that's one of the reasons. And she went on to brag that she does not monetize on YouTube, that she does not provide any memberships. And at the same time, she was complaining about scraping and just getting by the skin of her teeth. And I don't know about you, but if I wanted to have a session with her, for instance, and she was going on complaining about, how little she has to charge, or, the amount of money that she's charging, I would not feel really open about having a session with this person, right? Because if they're complaining about money and complaining about the session, that does not make me want to have a session with her, because I'd be worried that she'd be complaining about our session. But she was also directing people who were watching her videos to leave donations. She had a link in her description, and that's certainly a choice. She really put down people who actually created wealth with their calling. And, and she even said that 6 and 7 figure income earners are bad people, that they're all about the money. And, there's just so much wrong with that. I actually have created 6 figures in my business, with my spiritual business and with serving people. And the truth is that being in service does not mean that you then have to sacrifice integrity. Doesn't mean that you then sacrifice making money. That means then that you need to live in poverty. Like, that is just such a load of bull. And so I'm going to be sharing some things with you. First of all, I'm going to talk about some core beliefs, core money blocks in the spiritual community, especially when it comes to spiritual entrepreneurs, that is keeping spiritual people blocked right now. And I'm going to dispel them one by one. So the first one is that money is evil. So this is a belief, right? Because saying that money is evil or money is beautiful or whatever you want to call it, like putting an emotional charge and a personality trait on money is just a little ludicrous, because money is actually neutral. Money is neutral. It's not bad. It's not good. It's basically going to amplify what you already are. So if you are seeing people with money who are nasty people, who are not doing good in the world, they're going to be, when they're rich, they're going to be amplified in being a nasty person who doesn't do a lot of good in the world with money. But vice versa, if you are doing good in the world, if you have a good heart, if you want to create change in the world, if you want to create healing in the world, and you want to make money, then when you actually have money, it's just going to amplify that goodness within you. It's going to amplify the light within you. It's going to amplify the truth of who you really are. And so this is really important to know, because it's just an amplifier. It's not going to make you bad. It's not going to make you good. It's just going to amplify what you already are. And money is not evil. It is neutral. And I've already heard all these kind of pushbacks that I've gotten from the spiritual community on this, of like, well, if you just look at the dollar bill, it's got Illuminati symbols all over it and all this stuff. And what I'd like to say is, whether or not that's true, are you going to define your life based on some symbolism? Are you going to let that have power over you? Are you going to let some symbolism on some paper define how you're going to show up in the world? Because if so, then maybe you should not have a business. But the reality is that nothing has power over you unless you let it have power over you. This is a little bit from that conversation from episode 1, where I was talking about intuition versus fear. Another core money block that spiritual people have is that wanting to have money is greedy. If a mother wants to have money because she wants to feed her kids, is she being greedy? I think she just wants to provide for her kids. That's what I'm thinking, right? So wanting to have money doesn't necessarily equate that you're greedy. If you're focusing only on money at the expense of service, that is another issue. But wanting money just generally is not greedy. And if you think that it is, then you can talk to a mother who wants to feed her kids. That's all I got to say on that. Also, another core money block is that money's unspiritual. This is a huge one for people who are in the spiritual community, for spiritual entrepreneurs. Guess what that does, especially if you have a spiritual business, like let's say you do energy work for a living, or you lead breath work classes, or you teach yoga. And if you're doing any of those things and you believe that money's unspiritual, you're going to be broke AF, because you're not going to want to be unspiritual. There's another money block where you can either have money or you can have integrity. Here's a news flash. You can have both. You can have money and you can have integrity. You can be in service and you can be financially abundant. But here's another core money block that I actually heard ad nauseum when I first started out almost 20 years ago. If you're providing real healing and service that is authentic, it should be free. Blast that, put it on a piece of paper and burn it. If you ever see that written anywhere, because that is just so untrue and it's keeping so many new entrepreneurs broke. And it's false. You still need to develop your gifts. Just because you have gifts doesn't mean they are mastered on day one of your birth. Let's just give us a reality check here, right? It takes us years and life experience to hone our gifts and abilities. We don't just get born and then they're, on fire from day one and, we're totally in mastery and we know exactly what we're doing and exactly what we're hearing and feeling and seeing and connecting. It takes years. And just to give you an example, when I first started out as a spiritual entrepreneur, I heard this a lot, oh, you shouldn't be charging for this. You should be doing this for free. If you were really real, if you were really authentic, you wouldn't be charging for this. It would be all free. First of all, we are no longer in the Middle Ages giving each other a bushel of rice at each other's doorstep as a way of thank you and payment, right? We are in 2026. I was about to say 2016 because I'm thinking about something in 2016. But almost 20 years ago, when I was first starting out, I was hearing that a lot. And it really messed me up for a little bit because I was like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't charge anything then. And so I just charged something meager, like $50 for an initial visit or, something super cheap like that. And the thing is that when you are, this is just a business tip, when you are pricing your offers based on what random strangers are telling you they don't or do like, then you're basically leaving up your business strategy to random strangers. And I don't think that that's what you want to do, because the truth is that you get to lead your business, not let random people that either don't know you, don't know your gifts, don't know the potency of your work to dictate your business. I wouldn't recommend that. So here's a little hint. When you are honing your gifts and abilities, usually that takes a couple years. So that's a given. For me, I also had 7 years of acupuncture school. It's technically 4 years full-time, but I went part-time, some of it. So I was actually in acupuncture school for 7 years. Then on top of that, you got 2 years of clinical rounds as an acupuncturist, at least with the school I went to anyway. And then when it came to Reiki, I did the steps of level 1, 2, 3, 4, and taking years in between to cultivate my work and to practice on people and, to connect with energy and to connect with, God's source and really learn how to do that and learn how to, hone my energy field, to hone my protection, to hone my energy in general. And, and I was also in medicine apprenticeship. So I'm a medicine woman, initiated in the medicine way. I was in apprenticeship for a while. And then after that, you still have to practice it to make sure that you're, you got it down and you're doing it correctly. And then you're practicing on people. And, so that also takes years. So all of this collectively takes at least about 8-10 years just to get everything in. And that's just my example. That's the reason why my work isn't free. Because it's been at least 10 years of just learning stuff, being taught things, getting certifications and degrees. And even if you're not getting certifications and degrees, you have life experience. So for instance, people who have inherited lineages of, being a healer or, this kind of work that has been passed down through their family, for instance, and they just have life experience. Of course they should be charging for their work, right? So put it another way, would you expect doctors to charge free for a surgery, for instance, right? Or, going in for a consultation to help you with, a perforated lung or something, right? You'd expect that to be free? Or would you expect yourself to go into a therapist's office? Like one of my friends gave me this example, which was brilliant. And she said, would you go into a therapist's office and would you say, I don't feel like I agree with your pricing system and you should really give this to me for free because I really need it? Excuse me? So should teachers teach for free? I think you see what I'm trying to get at. Another one is good people are broke, bad people are rich. BS. That's full on BS. I know a lot of really actually rich, wealthy people whose focus is service. And they just really know how to create strategies in their business. They know how to package their systems and offerings and services. And that's actually something that I help my clients do as well, because sometimes that's what it is. It's like the strategy and it's also the level of embodiment that you have. And some people are just really, really embodied in their wealth and some people are not. And the ones who have these cycling money blocks and beliefs in their brain, they're usually the ones who are not making money because they have this belief system. Because the thing is whatever you believe is what you make your decisions on. And if you believe that bad people are rich and good people are broke, then you are going to keep perpetrating this situation in your life where you're just going to always be broke because you want to be a good person. So just think about that a little bit. Another fallacy is that being broke makes you humble. It doesn't make you humble, it just makes you broke. It's not an honor system over here, you're not getting brownie points for being broke. No one is like having a little spreadsheet in heaven saying, wow, what an amazing person. They just, asked for alms all day. And so they're a good, humble person, even though she's doing all this stuff in the world, right? No one's doing that. No one's doing that. And also having extra money is bad, apparently. So you can only make just enough to cover your bills, make just enough to pay your electricity and your utilities and your rent, but you can't have any extra because then you're too money hungry, right? Not true. So we're going to talk about some programs here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, because these are like rampant in the spiritual community. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Scarcity Program. So the Scarcity Program is when you believe there's not enough to go around. You might even say that, like there's not enough to go around. And one way that this shows up for spiritual entrepreneurs is that they will not make sales in their business because they believe that if they are taking from their client this money, then their client is out of money, right? That they're now lacking in money because they just gave it to them. That's not what's going on here. What's actually going on when your client pays you is that not only are they choosing in their sovereign beingness how they want to circulate their money through the economy, and they want to intentionally invest it in themselves, in their life, in change, in growth, in transformation with you. That is what they're doing. You're not grabbing the money out of their hand. You're not going into their bank account and like siphoning it with a vacuum cleaner, right? They are on their own volition, with intention and with consciousness. They're paying you because they believe in your work, because they are really feeling like, wow, what Sally's got, I really could use that help right now. And so I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to believe in myself enough to invest in myself with Sally. Right? So that is more likely what's going on. You are believing that you are taking from others when you are receiving money. That's simply not true. People are sovereign beings. Even people that you don't think are sovereign, they're still sovereign beings. Even if you think that they're putting their money in ridiculous places, they're still making a sovereign choice to put their money in ridiculous places. So they're still a sovereign being. They're still choosing to have this experience with their money. And that's on them, right? If they're a sovereign being, they get to make that choice. When you are in scarcity, you are basically surviving. Or like barely even surviving. Like you're making maybe just enough or not even enough, right? And you're just kind of like scrambling around, trying to get by. And literally your body is not emotionally regulated. You are not grounded, and you're probably scattered when you're in the scarcity program, because you'll always feel like no matter what you do, it is never enough, because you'll never get enough. There's never enough for you. And ultimately, if you go under that, the fear is, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. I don't have enough because I'm not enough, right? So just kind of chew on that for a little bit, because it goes deep. So when we're talking about money, it's never really about the money. It's about what the money represents. And the truth is, there's more than enough to go around. And that's really the truth of the scarcity program. And that scarcity program is meant to keep you in survival mode, to keep you broke, to keep you being in fear, to believing your own limitations that you think that you have, because sometimes your perceived limitations aren't actually real. They're just a perception that you have based on when you were like 4 or 5 years old or something. And what you'll do when you are in the scarcity program is that then you probably won't show up. You probably will not be doing your sacred work because you're afraid of what's going to happen. You are probably going to be avoiding visibility, and you're going to be proving your worth by being broke. So that's kind of part of the scarcity program, which kind of segues into the poverty program, which is another program, also very terrible, very not connected to God, because the whole thing is that poverty glorifies struggle. The poverty program glorifies struggle. And it creates a whole identity around just barely getting by, just, barely making it, just being in exhaustion all the time, self-sacrificing, and maybe you're even refusing support. A lot of people who are in scarcity or who are in the poverty programs have issues around receiving a lot of times, because, maybe it's because they didn't get a lot when they were growing up, maybe from their caregivers, their parents, whomever was bringing them up. And so they might be feeling like they're not worthy of receiving that deeply, to be receiving like thousands of dollars, for instance. Like that's just too much. That's not in their capacity to hold. And as you can imagine, that is just a framework of how you're experiencing life versus the true reality. So a lot of times the poverty program is just all about, I'm humble because I'm broke. I'm full of humility because I'm broke. Or I'm worthy of good in this world because I'm broke. Then you have the Martyr Program, which is a complex. It's like the Martyr complex, right? So basically when we are in a Martyr Program, and it's a little bit connected to the Savior complex that a lot of people in the spiritual community have, which is where they're like, oh, I will save you. Let me save you. I will save you. I'm the only one who can save you, right? And that's a little bit connected to the Martyr Program, because the Martyr Program or complex is all about, if I'm suffering, it's for the good of others. Right? It proves how good I am. Sacrifice makes me more spiritual. And I should give endlessly, endlessly, endlessly until literally I am just an empty husk of nothing. And that proves that I'm worthy, or that proves how spiritual I am. All that proves is that you're not taking care of yourself. It's kind of this thing of you needing to put on your mask first before assisting others. And you get to do that because you're not here to be a martyr. You're not here to be anyone's savior. You get to save yourself, number one, and you get to be of assistance and of service if you are doing, first of all, spiritual work, for instance. So that's a little bit about the Martyr Program. You want to really be careful that you don't fall into these programs because they're so rampant in the spiritual community and they're very sneaky. because it shows up as being virtuous. And there's nothing virtuous about being broke. There's nothing, and there's nothing wrong with being broke either. So if that's where you are at this moment in the season, I'm not bad mouthing that, but I'm saying to have that be the end goal is going to be very uncomfortable for you. And it will also not allow you to fully express yourself in the fullness of your work because you're going to be too busy trying to survive, right? So just really understand that all of this is also centered around your beliefs. And there's this belief that you need to choose. So I'm going to give you some examples of this. So either I serve or I have money. Either I have integrity or I have money. Either I'm ethical or I'm wealthy. Either I care about people or I care about money instead. Either I'm humble or I succeed in life. And the truth is, all of that is BS because you don't need to choose. What if you can have all that you desire? Like, what if you really want to be in service, but you also want to be abundantly wealthy with your money and have an abundant lifestyle even, There's nothing wrong with wanting all of those things. And like I've been saying throughout this whole broadcast, it's never about the money. It's about what the money represents to you. And that's something you get to explore a little more. I'm just going to go into why some people actually charge a very abundant amount, such as in the thousands, for their high-level work or for their retreats. Like my working with me is an investment. But that's also because I've cultivated this for basically my entire life and for many decades. And I already know the level of my work. I know the caliber of my work. I know that it actually does result in transformation for my clients. And I'm very confident in that. There's no wiggle wobble for me around that. People who step into work with me, they emerge a different person. And I've heard that so often that when you create results for your clients, you start to realize how profound your work is. And this is not even about me talking about myself. I'm talking about when you understand your worth, when you understand the level of transformation that you provide, when you take ownership of the fact that you have, for how many years you've been on this earth, that all this time you have gathered information, you have been going deeper into your mastery with your gifts, with all the abilities that you have, with how you help people, with how you create transformation. You have gathered years, maybe even decades, doing this work, understanding yourself more deeply so that you can be responsible with your work when you are working with clients. And that is so important. And no one actually talks about that much. They just talk about oh yeah, I have this offer, come join me and it's going to be awesome. But they don't tell you how important it is that when you are providing services for your clients, for your patients, you are holding a private container or maybe a group container if there's a bunch of people. You are holding a powerful space of integrity. That container's integrity is based on your integrity. It's based on how much and how deeply you are connecting your energy with what you are offering. And people who don't do this, who don't hold a really solid container because they don't really know themselves that deeply yet, that can be seen and felt in an offer, in a service. You can feel that. And so that is why some people do charge, a healthy investment for their work because it freaking works. And they've been in mastery for years and they know the level of their mastery. And of course, you get to, share other ways of working with yourself too, because if people are well, I want to be more accessible, and this kind of segues into something around, wanting to be more accessible and undercharging your offers. Because there's this thing when you're undercharging for your offers, or you succumb to this peer pressure that everything you do should just be free or $3. Let me give you some reality check here. If you even charge $1, you'll still get someone who's going to be angry about that, who's going to say, why is it $1? It shouldn't be $1. It should be free, right? And then even if you give it for free, they'll be like, they'll have something to complain about that. They'll still be like, oh yeah, it's free, but blah, 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 right? Like there's always something to complain about. Those are not your ideal clients, by the way, but lowering your prices is not going to help people. If you're worried about being accessible, which I know this is why a lot of people undercharge, especially if they're newbies in their business, lowering your price to avoid someone's discomfort isn't service. You're being a people pleaser when you do that. Another way you're being a people pleaser is when you start associating guilt and shame for charging the worth of the transformation you provide, or you're over delivering because you feel like your services aren't enough to stand alone on its own. And so you're giving free calls and free bonuses and discounts and all this other stuff on top, like just, because you don't feel like your work can stand on its own at that price point. Now that is also people pleasing. And so being a people pleaser and being in service, you can't be both. You can either be in service or you can be a people pleaser, because when you're a people pleaser, you're going to want to change things around in your business so that you can appease other people, so that other people will be pleased about, oh yeah, now I feel like that is an amount I can get behind, right? That is an amount I don't mind paying you, right? But like I said, potential clients, strangers, random people who have never been in your shoes, they are not your boss of your business. You are. So you get to take ownership of that. And what's under the undercharging of the services, it's really about the people pleasing. It's about not taking ownership of your worth yet. It's about not taking ownership of the level of transformation you provide. Like you might still be a little nervous about that, which then means all you got to do is, you can do some, if you're first year in business, you can, have some things at a specific discount for the first year. And then after the first year, then it's full price, if you're really, really new at this. Or if you feel really weird about not giving anything that's like under $100 or $50 or something, then do some volunteer work somewhere. Just to give you some story and background on this, as an acupuncturist, I am not actually allowed to give a sliding scale. I'm not allowed to give a sliding scale of, okay, this person pays like 300, this person pays 100, this person pays 50. Like I'm not allowed to do that. I just have like a flat rate. The flat rate is the flat rate. But what I would do at the beginning when I was first starting out is I would volunteer once a month at some place where I was kind of part of a wellness team, and we provided like free healing sessions or whatever to the community. And then they would come in and they'd pay some kind of sliding scale. One of my friends, when I was talking to her about this topic, she brought up that, people who want to say, oh, I'm too spiritual for that, right? I'm too spiritual to want money or to like work with money or to have money. She brought up that Jesus was not poor. Jesus, otherwise known as Yeshua ben Joseph, he was not poor. He had a treasurer. He needed someone to manage his wealth. He wasn't poor. And Yeshua did not have the scarcity mentality, the poverty mentality, because if he did, remember that story about multiplying the loaves and the fishes for 5,000 people? Like I think there was 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and then he fed 5,000 people with it because he multiplied it. If he was truly not about any level of abundance, which you would need to in order to be able to multiply things in abundance, then he would not have been able to do that. He would not have been able to multiply the fish and the bread and feed 5,000 people and have extra surplus after that, because he had distributed all of that to all the people and everyone was fed and there was extra, so what does that tell you? If he was actually in scarcity and all about having poverty, I don't think he would be having a treasurer. He wasn't poor, and he wouldn't have created massive abundance out of nowhere, because people who are abundant do abundant things and create abundant things, just like Yeshua did. And speaking of Yeshua, I'm going to also talk about where money really comes from, because there's this belief that money comes from your boss. It comes from your clients. It comes from your students. It comes from some place outside of you. The reality is that real abundance, money, wealth, anything else that is abundance and wealth comes from God. It comes from God, and you being a fractal of God, it's coming from you. You are the source of money. You are the source of wealth and abundance. You get to follow your calling and be abundant while doing it. Because here's the thing, money is just a tool. It's this kind of tail of the hammer, for instance, right? You've got this hammer, that's a tool, and you can either destroy things with it or hurt people very badly, or you could build a house with it. You could build your kid's bed frame. You could do a lot of things. You could build things with it, right? Or you could build a whole house with it and sell it, creating more abundance for yourself, right? It's simply a tool. Is the hammer bad for existing? No, because it's just a tool. Same thing with money. Money is just a tool. And also money is neutral and money is energy. And so if you truly are a master with your energy, you can be a master with your money, which is the energy of wealth, the energy of abundance. All of this is really about your relationship with abundance, with worth, with receiving, with being healed in, how you view money and how you work with energy and how you feel worthy of energy. What money stories did you grow up with? Because ultimately, whatever you grew up with, because we all grew up with some kind of beliefs around money based on what our parents had, on what they said, on how they acted around money, or our caregivers, if we were brought up by our grandparents or, aunts, uncles, or anyone else, we inherited their money beliefs. And this is why I do not recommend just copying other people's prices for your prices and think that that's a good strategy. It's not, because what you're really doing is you're pricing your work based on other people's money limitations and stories about money that they have. So when it comes to your caregivers, for instance, there are things that they probably said. One thing that I always heard growing up myself was, money doesn't grow on trees. My dad particularly, one thing he would say a lot is, more money, more problems. And so he'd be in his den writing, paying the bills with his checks, and he'd be like, more money, more problems, and that was what I believed. And so I grew up believing, if you have more money, you're going to have more problems. And I didn't want problems, so I didn't have money because I didn't want problems. These are stories. These are stories that we experienced. But the most powerful thing about this is that we get to reprogram ourselves, because we are not just stuck with these money blocks, right? What you do is, if you do realize you grew up with some money story that you inherited from your parents or caregivers, such as money doesn't grow on trees, and so now you are working really, really hard to the nib of your bones just to make a paycheck, right? What about the new belief could be, money is easy to come by. It's easy for me to make money. And I just want to be clear that this is not about espousing money affirmations and then expecting to be a millionaire tomorrow, right? You actually need to be embodied in that belief. So if you truly believe that money is easy to come by, that will be your reality. And that will be your reality because you're going to be making decisions based on that belief of money's easy to come by. But if, on the other hand, if you're saying more money, more problems, like I was thinking, back in the day, and I was creating decisions, making decisions based on, I don't want to have more problems, so I don't want to have money. So then, there was a period there where I literally didn't have money because I didn't want more problems. So what you would do instead is more money, more opportunities. More money, more options. That's one way you could reword that. So my invitation to you is to just consider what I've shared here. And if you're resonating with a lot of this, if you're identifying with a lot of this, for instance, don't feel bad about it, because in order to really be in the fullness of your abundance, you first need to kind of wake up to what you've been programming yourself with. And then you extract yourself from the program, and then you reprogram yourself with something else, right? And that does take work. That does take a level of embodiment. And it goes beyond just having money affirmations all day and then expecting to be having a Corvette in your garage by tomorrow. Like, it takes a level of will to embody this new version of yourself. I invite you to just really consider, what did you learn about money growing up? And just explore that a little bit. What are the belief systems that you inherited? What have you been afraid people would think about you if you became financially successful? And what could become possible in your service, in your mission, in your life, if you allowed yourself to be fully supported? What we covered today is the core money blocks in the spiritual community, especially with spiritual entrepreneurs, the scarcity, poverty, and martyr programs that exist within the spiritual community, what undercharging for your services is really about and what it means, and uncovering the money beliefs you inherited and the truth about where money comes from. So these are some of the highlights of what I covered today. So let me know in the comments below what came up for you. So if this has really resonated for you and landed for you, please subscribe to this channel, because every week there will be a new episode of the Power Series. And next week, in fact, will be episode 3, which I'm calling The Healing Trap, when you're stuck in a healing loop. Hopefully it gave you some things that you revealed about yourself, some things that you are learning about, and maybe you're going to dismantle some of these old matrices within yourself and your life, and then just open up into more abundance, because you are worthy and deserving of that. And if you are having a lot of gifts and abilities and you've been mastering that for many years and you're sharing that with people, you get to be abundant in your calling doing it. So I hope that served you today. So much love to you, and I'll see you next week.